In this video, we'll talk about availability heuristic. Availability heuristic refers to people's tendency to outweigh the information that is more frequently accessible in their memories rather than the content of the information. Our memories and recent experiences have a strong impact on our decisions. We may assume that our memory mirrors reality, but this assumption is not always accurate. A salient, vivid precedent that grabs our disproportionate attention will be easily retrieved from our memories. In an experiment, people were asked to evaluate their own assertiveness. In group 1, participants were instructed to think of 6 examples that demonstrated their own assertiveness. In group 2, they were instructed to come up with 12 examples. Rationally, you'd think those in group 2 would think they were more assertive than those in group 1 because they provided more examples of being assertive. That's not what happened. Participants in group 2 thought themselves less assertive, even though they actually listed more instances of their own assertiveness. Why? Because it was more difficult for them to access their memory and come up with the examples demonstrating their assertiveness. They thought that they must not be particularly assertive. They answered the question by evaluating how easily the information came to their mind. 2 factors influence how accessible the information is in our memories. First, the more salient the information is, the more available it is in our memories. Second, the more familiar the information is, the more available it is in our memories. An example of salience influences availability heuristic is how we remember 911. We are more likely to remember what we were doing on September 11, 2001 than that of October 11, 2002. Because of the vivid memories we have for the earlier date, even though the later date is more recent. Because 911 was so salient, emotionally evoking in people's memory, 911 is more available than October 11 in our memory when we retrieve our memory. Moreover, a terrorist attack shown on television is more vivid and more salient to viewers and has a greater impact than a report about the attack in the newspaper. The second factor influences how accessible the information is in our memories is familiarity. The more familiar the information is, the more available it is in our memories. In one experiment, researchers read lists of 39 people's names to participants at a rate of 2 seconds per name. The names were all easily identifiable as male or female. A few were the names of famous people, such as Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Nixon. A few were names of slightly less famous people. The first list consisted of 19 male names and 20 female names. Even though this list had more female names, it had more names of famous men. The second list consisted of 20 male names and 19 female names. This list had more male names, but it had more names of famous women. After listening to a list, the participants were asked to judge if the list contained the names of more men or women. To make this judgment, whether the names were famous is irrelevant to the number of the names. But the participants' judgment in this experience almost always got it backward. They thought list 1 contained more male names and list 2 had more female names. This experiment shows the more familiar the information is, the more available it is in our memories. Probability is the measure of how likely an event is. It is the ratio of the number of favorable outcomes to the total number of possible outcomes. Every event has an objectively correct answer of probability, but this is not the case in many real life situations where probabilities are judged. We frequently use the availability heuristic to answer questions about probability. How likely is that a particular program or reform will succeed? We answer the question by asking whether examples come easily to our mind. People usually use past failure or success to judge the probability of a future event. No politician wants to be responsible for another Vietnam War. If a particular strategy ended up with a disaster, it would be very much in people's mind, and today's decision will be made in light of that disaster. If an organization put a lot of money into a recent program A, which turned into a fiasco, the organization will avoid any new initiative that looks even close to program A, even if the new initiative has a lot of potential. Each occurrence of an economic recession, a successful medical operation, and a personnel decision is essentially unique, and its probability cannot be evaluated by a simple tally of instances. Nevertheless, it is more efficient to make a decision by using the availability heuristic. Thanks to the trade-off between efficiency and accuracy, the availability heuristic can sometimes lead people in wrong directions. In this video, we talk about availability heuristic. It is people's tendency to outweigh the information that is more frequently accessible in their memories rather than the content of the information. Now it is time for you to provide an example of the availability heuristic and reflect on how the availability heuristic influences decisions made by you or the people around you.